Welcome to this session on how to use a Qualtrics template that we have provided for you. I will walk you through how you can use a template for your survey and some advantages and disadvantages of certain types of questions in Qualtrics. So if you have a look at the screen that we see right now here, so on your Canvas page within the MRP project module, I already have uploaded a template for your Qualtrics survey. This template is just for you to use, so you all have the same kind of structure in the survey. Of course, every group will implement different questions, and therefore it's fine for every group to use the same template. The template is still hidden, but I will allow you to download the template within the end of week number 2. So if you would click on that, you would download a Qualtrics file, which you won't be able to open on your computer. But once you have downloaded it, you can find it in your folder, and you can then go to your Qualtrics page, which will be most likely empty for you. But here you can see all of the projects that I've been doing. And then you click on Create a New Project in the top right corner. Then you click on Survey. And then instead of using a blank project, please click on From a File, and then you can choose your file here. You click on Choose Your File, usually your download folder should open, and you see the MRP Qualtrics file right here. So you open that. Then it also may automatically insert that as a project name. As you see here, this hashtag should be replaced by your tutorial group number. So for example, if you're in my tutorial group on Monday morning, then this would be tutorial group number 1. And then, of course, you indicate your team, either A, B, or C. I'll just do that now as an example. You put that into your project name, and then you click on Get Started here in the top right. And Qualtrics will load your survey. So you will load the template that we created for you. And you see that in the template, you have 3 blocks that you can open and close. Okay. So what we see here is that in the first block, I indicated in red where you should put a little bit of a description for your participants, so participants know what your survey will be about. And we have a kind of a standard text that we always display for our survey participants. Given that all of you are using a Mass University Qualtrics account, you're kind of representing the university when you send out the survey. So please make sure that your participant information text is professional and that it describes clearly what the survey is about. Then what you see here, there's a page break. That simply means that the survey will jump to the next page. And from here onwards, you can insert all the questions that you actually want to insert. Okay, so we'll go through a couple of examples of what you could do in a second. So here you would insert, a question. For example, you want to find out what is the likelihood of a customer to download an app, or you want to investigate how important it is for a customer, whether there is CO2 compensation for a ride, or whether Dott partners up with the local Instagram star. These could be many things that you want to investigate in your MRP. So what you would do is you click on Create a New Question, and a new question pops up. What you can already see here, it says question, in this case, question 42, because there were other questions created in the survey already that have been deleted. But it's always good to name your question already here, right? So let's say I want to investigate something about the importance of partnering up with different partners or influencers. Then I would call this maybe importance partner. Once we have done this, we can write our question text. But currently, as you can see, this question is still set to multiple choice. So if you then go to the top right, as you probably already learned in previous tutorials, you can select different types of questions. The questions that you're most likely going to use is either a multiple choice question or a matrix table. For some questions, for example, if you want to measure age and you want participants to enter the text, or in this case, the numbers of their age, you can also use a descriptive text. Here you can also add pictures and ask participants, for example, to rate 2 different pictures. But these are the most common questions that you're going to use. We are aware of the fact that, these specialty questions that are shown down here seem like very innovative and great questions to use. However, I have to warn you, the data that you get out of them is often really difficult to analyze. So I would recommend you not using them unless you really have a good idea of how you want to analyze the data that you get out of these questions. So for our purpose now, if we want to rate the importance of partnering up with different types of influencers, for example, we would choose a matrix table question. So if you click on that, you see that a matrix table appears, and currently it consists of 3 statements that we still have to fill up and only 3 scale points. In your tutorials and also the web lectures, you have learned that you probably want to use a Likert scale that consists of 5 or 7 points, right? So what we want to do here, if you go to the right, you would increase the scale points to, let's say, at least 5, and you see that it increases here in the table as well from 1 to 5. Now, what you see as well as here, Qualtrics has this nice feature that it offers you some automatic scale points, not all of them, but if you click on that, you would see that it automatically gives you the scale points, as you can see here now, if you look at the matrix table, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, right? If you click on this little drop-down menu here, you see a lot of different options that you can choose as well, right? So this helps you so you don't have to manually type in all the different questions or scale point labels. So again, if we want to investigate whether customers think a certain partnership with an influencer or a local soccer club or something like that would be important, then or unimportant, then we would choose this label here for unimportant to important, and we would display all of the labels for each scale point. So if you click on that, you see now that we rank it here from extremely important on the left-hand side to very important to moderately important in the middle, and then slightly important and not important at all, or not at all important. You can also try to see what happens if you increase the scale points from 5 to 7. Then for this particular scale, we would need to add the scale points ourselves. For other scales, for example, you can see if you choose strongly agree to disagree, it automatically also adds the labels. What is important to understand here is you want to know how Qualtrics codes these labels. So at the moment, we don't know if strongly agree is coded as 1 or if it's coded as 7, right? So therefore, what you want to do, and it's something you want to double check, is you click on this little icon here on the left-hand side, and then you click on Recode Values. You see here, and unfortunately SPSS sometimes does that, it didn't code the labels from 1 to 7, but for some unfortunate reason, and this is a problem that often occurs with SPSS, it seems to have coded these from 23 to 29. So what you want to do is you click on Recode Values and you change that. So you want to have strongly agree as 7, agree as 6, and so on. So double check, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes, and it's good that it actually happens in this video, it does some weird coding to the questions, and we need to correct that early on. It saves you a lot of time later on in SPSS. So recode the values, and I would always strongly recommend to code the strongly agree or the very important labels or the the positive end of a Likert scale as 7, and the strongly disagree or the super unimportant label on that side as 1, and then the labels in between respectively. So you double check that. One thing that you can also do with these automatic scale points, again, if you click on that list, at the very top you can see you can reverse the order, right? So what it does, it changes on which side of your label or of your Likert scale, you see strongly agree and strongly disagree. It is not super important on which side you have the strongly agree or the strongly disagree, but it should be consistent throughout your survey, right? So if we have this example where we have strongly agree now on the right-hand side, and we make sure that strongly agree, again, is coded as 7. You see that here. Then we should do the same kind of order for all the following questions as well. So your participants don't get confused that sometimes strongly agrees on the right-hand side and sometimes on the left-hand side. Good. So this could be one particular question for you. What you also should do is, again, if you click on this question, you see here this checkbox, mobile friendly. Given that you probably send out the survey to a lot of people, there might be a high chance that some of your participants actually will conduct the survey on a mobile phone or on a tablet. So you should tick this option of mobile friendly. And also what I strongly recommend to do is to tick forced response. So in case a participant is clicking through these matrix tables and forgets a question and then clicks on the next button, the software will remind the participant that he or she still has to fill in one of the questions. This really helps you to have a complete data set in the end. Now, moving on to the second block. So add all your variables here. In the second block here, we have a block of some questions that Dott sent to me because they definitely wanted them to be investigated. So these questions, please do not change or do not touch them in any way. You can, of course, have a look at them. You can also have an idea about, how the questions will be structured. And what you see here is Dott wanted to ask about the transport method that people use to commute. So Dott has already asked or will ask a question about all these different types of transport. And they want to find out which ones customers are more likely to use for a trip between 1 to 5 kilometers. You can later on use this data for your report as well if you choose that you want to write about that. But this data shouldn't be in your research questions. So if your research questions that you came up with in this week on Monday and on Thursday already covered this, that's fine. Then of course you don't have to put in the question twice, but you shouldn't change your research question just because you see these questions now. Then Dott wants to check if somebody has already written an e-scooter before or not. And then they want to investigate also the reasons why somebody has not yet written an e-scooter and also why they want to try it or not try it. So what you see here is some kind of a display logic. So depending on what the participant ticks here in this question that is called right, the participant either ticks yes or no, but I would like to try, or no, I'm not interested, a follow-up question will be asked. So if a person ticks yes, then, as you indicate here in the display logic, if yes is selected, this kind of matrix table will be asked. So Dott wants to investigate, hey, if somebody has ridden a scooter before, why did the person choose to ride a scooter for the first time? However, if a participant decides here to tick no, there are two other follow-up questions, namely, why haven't you tried riding an e-scooter? For example, it's not available, it's too expensive, or it does not feel safe. Or if someone has ticked no, and I'm also not interested to do so, Dott again asks these three questions here. Then what we also see is some questions with regard to branding and sustainability, some questions with regard to discounting, and one single multiple choice question on whether the participant is using a monthly subscription to a public transport service or like a semester ticket or a yearly ticket in the city that the participant is living. So please do not change or touch these questions that are in block number 2 at all. And then we have part number 3, where we included some demographic variables. Of course, you can change these, you can add more if you need to answer more demographic variables. The variables that we're basically asking about is country of origin, so where this person originally born, what's the nationality of that person, where does the person currently live. Of course, this could differ from where that person was born. And currently live we define as spend most of your days for living, working, or studying. So as you know, as a student, this applies to you as well. If you're not from the Netherlands, you might still currently live in the Netherlands. So you would tick another country here than what you've ticked above here. And then we also ask about the city, because of course it's relevant for Dott whether the person is from a large city in Europe or whether the person comes from a very, very small village where Dott is unlikely to implement their services in the near future. Then we ask about age, and we learned about how to ask about age, so we already implemented that here in the right form. As you see, if you click on the question, we have text entry, and we included a content validation. So we tell Qualtrics that the content type has to be a number, and the numeric format should be between 0 and 99. This is the only type of number that a participant could enter. This again saves you a lot of time later on, so you don't have to manually recode certain values in SPSS. And then we also ask a question with regard to gender. As I said here, in block number 3, or in part number 3, you can change this question if you think they need changing. Don't worry, there are no trick questions in there, so it's not that we implemented wrong questions. So all the questions that are in there are correctly stated, but if you want to change them anyhow, or if you need to add more demographics, as you learned in your tutorial, you want to add demographic at the end of your survey, so please add them anywhere here in this third block. Now, a few more things. When you create your survey, what you can do actually, if you want to look at how does my data actually in the end look like, is you click on Tools, and Tools offers you quite a few features in the Reviewing tab. In the Reviewing tab, you can search and replace certain terms. It's like a Control F and replace in Word, which could be good if you want to replace a certain term across the whole survey. But more importantly, you can run a spell check, which I strongly recommend to all of you to spell check your survey before you send it out to participants. And that's what I mean is here, you can generate test responses, right? You have a survey now, but it's completely empty. No one has filled it in yet. So you might want to generate some random test responses generated by the computer to see how your data will look like. So you click on generate test responses. And let's say you want to generate 10 responses. You click on start test. And in a matter of seconds, you get a couple of responses. You can repeat that if you want, but usually 10 responses are just fine to check how your data will actually look like in the end. Then you click on close, and you can do another preview of your survey up here in the top right corner. If you click on preview, you see how the survey currently looks like, and it also displays how the survey would look like on a mobile phone here on the right hand side. You can turn this on and off, but I recommend you to just double check how the survey behaves on a phone as well. Of course, here is no introduction text yet. This is your task to fill that in. But you can click through the survey and actually test how it would behave and how it would look like as well. You can, again, close that or restart the survey, but for the sake of today, we're just closing that and actually want to have a look at the test responses and at our data set. So in our data set, you have to click on Data and Analysis, as you've learned in a previous research workshop. And you can have a look at the data here in the Qualtrics window as well, but usually we directly proceed to downloading the data and inspecting it in SPSS. You can wait for this indexing of the data here in Qualtrics, but again, I would just recommend you to download it right away to investigate your data set in SPSS. To do so, you click on Export and Import and click on Export Data. And then you click on SPSS, download all fields, double check the More Option button here, and make sure that if you choose to have a randomizer in your survey, that you tick the box Export Viewing Order Data for Randomized Survey. Even if you don't have it, well, it doesn't hurt to tick that box. It doesn't change anything to your data. So as a rule of thumb, I would just always recommend you ticking that box. Then you click on Download. It takes a few seconds. Then you have the file here. You want to open it. It downloads as a zip file. And you can open that in SPSS. You see your data you see again, SPSS provides a lot of additional information that you may or may not need. So if you go to the variable view, you see you get when did the survey start, when was it finished. You get a variable that's called status that gives you the IP address. It also tells you whether the data was imported. It gives you a lot of information that you probably don't need. However, it tells you, and that's important for you, which of the responses were due to a survey preview that you might have done, and it also tells you what are test responses. This is relevant because, of course, you have to delete them once you collect actual responses. It shows the IP address, the progress, how long it took to complete the survey, whether the survey is finished or not, and a lot of additional information on your participants. Most often these fields are empty. So let's double check what data we have. As you can see here in this column, it flags all the test responses that I've created, right? I clicked twice on generating 10 responses. So it makes sense that in total now we have 20 responses in our survey. Again, you see the start date for them will probably all be the same, with just being a second apart because they're computer generated test responses. Of course, later on in your survey, you would need to delete them. Then you recall we did a question that we called importance of partnerships, and we didn't finish that question in particular, but we made sure that all the variables are coded from 1 to 7. And just a quick look at that column also seems like that this worked out, right? With the lowest response I can find here is a 1. The biggest response I can find is a 7. If I double click on the head of this column, I will actually jump back to the variable view and I can look at the labels and have a reminder of what 1 and 7 actually means. So I double click and we are back here. And if you click on the values, you actually are reminded of what the labels mean. So because we recoded it that way, 1 means strongly disagree and 7 means strongly agree. Then you have obviously all the questions in there that Dott wanted to include on top of all the research questions and questionnaire questions that you're going to generate. So you already see quite a bit of data on the question of transport method. You see this question that asks whether people have already written an e-scooter, and if not, why they choose not to do so. So we only see 1s and 2s and 3 in here. Why is that? Well, again, if you double click on write, and if you check the values in the write variable, then you see that 1 means yes, 2 means no, but I want to try, and 3 means no, and there is no interest in trying. Then you also see that there are a couple of reasons for people why they tried, and also a text response where we potentially see some random computer generated text, right? So here, if a person said yes in the right question, yes, I've tried riding an e-scooter, and if they indicated yes, they also have other reasons why they tried riding an e-scooter, then they get this text box option and they could fill in some text here. This text is, of course, just a filler text generated by the computer. It doesn't make any sense now, but of course you would assume that a participant puts in another reason of why he or she has tried an e-scooter or why he or she hasn't tried an e-scooter. So this gives you a good overview of how your data will actually look like. Here at the very end, we see the city where somebody lives is also just randomly generated now. So Qualtrics just put text in there. And we also see randomly generated age and gender of some of your participants. Of course, because it's randomly generated, the numbers here don't make particularly sense at the moment. This is really just to show you how your data will look like in the end. Again, if you have a gender variable and you don't remember what 1, 0, and 2 means, double click on the head of the column, and then you can check the values here. Right, so in our case, it was coded as 0 being female, 1 being male, and 2 being other. Good, this sums up on how to use the MRP Qualtrics template. Please have a look at the template and make sure that you only work in the right blocks. Again, I'll show you that one last time. If you go back to the survey, we have 3 blocks here, part 1, part 2, and part 3. It is very important that you please do not change the questions in part 2. Feel free to add as many questions as you can in part 1. And remember, if it's demographic questions, please add them at the end of your survey. Thank you very much. Enjoy your carnival holidays and good luck in setting up the survey.